All right, we have a lot of ground to cover and not much time, so we'll just get right into it. The DMT-Nexus is an online community that's really focused on disseminating and increasing information that we have about DMT and other psychedelic compounds. Our community takes a harm reduction approach focused on minimizing the risks associated with the extraction and use of these compounds, and we have a communal ethos of sustainability and responsible sourcing and the use of these compounds. One of the main goals of the Nexus is to increase and organize research on ethnobotanical compounds while facilitating a collaborative exchange of ideas, and this has actually led to the creation of the Collaborative Research Project. This came to being as we encountered numerous plants that were only briefly mentioned in much of the common literature, and as we began to encounter more of them and then find that they were spilling out into the global ethnobotanical marketplace and being consumed by people who didn't know what was in them, we saw a clear need to begin to document and put all the references that we could find into one place. So pretty much whenever a Nexian comes across a plant or compound that they feel to be of worth or of note, they begin a work thread, and we've collected information ranging from ethnobotanical uses to distribution ranges, chemical profiles, literally any mention that's in the literature.
Some people may think that underground researchers, that the most that we do is like take drugs in the basement and write down the colors we see, but no, there's actually real science being done also. Okay, it's not working, the video. Okay, anyways. We've been doing analytical work for about 4 years now, researching these plants for harm reduction purposes and botanical research. And first the first thing we do is a thin layer chromatography test, which is actually a really simple and relatively cheap method to see what compounds are present in a sample. Then with collaboration with energy control, we've been doing some also gas chromatography or liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry analysis, which is a much more, let's say, powerful instrument. And it gives very detailed information on the compounds present. And we've been posting all of this information online, the mass spectra of these files, so if any researcher wants to check our findings and give review, so they're free to come to the Nexus. Relating to ayahuasca, this has been said a few times in this conference, but there is an emphasis on DMT usually, and many people consider harmalas as only orally activating DMT, but the truth is that harmalas and Banisteriopsis capi, they are very active on their own, and we've also been analyzing some different ayahuasca samples because we've been seeing a lot of botanical confusion. Some people have been naming vines differently, so we've been trying to find out a little bit of what's happening and what's in these plants that people have been selling.
So yeah, pretty much in an attempt to get as much information out there as possible to people that are actively using these as well as interested from perhaps research standpoints, we've been trying to analyze as many specimens as we can get our hands on. And at the moment, we've analyzed numerous specimens of the 4 species you see on the PowerPoint. We've found that both Banisteriopsis species contain harmala alkaloids, but we have not been able to identify any of the compounds presented in either Tetrapteris methistica or Alicia anisopetala. And this becomes significant when we take into account the fact that these vines are being sold in many cases as black copy or gray copy or even black ayahuasca. And so in some cases we've found that vendors are doing it unintentionally and they've been happy to change the labeling. In some cases vendors have outright said that they're doing it because it's more marketable and because they're scared people won't recognize the vines unless they call them copy. So as we don't really know what's in these vines, we urge caution if you're buying things online and would really suggest if you're getting the vine in large enough pieces that you can take a look at the cross-section. This is one of the most reliable visual identifications we've come up with. If you have any questions, please come to the Nexus and post pictures or ask the questions that you have, and we'll try to help identify what's there. The other route that you can take is to brew an unreduced tea from the vine and see if it fluoresces under ultraviolet light. Harmala alkaloids will, these other vines currently fluoresce very differently. So the most commonly known ayahuasca vine is Banisteriopsis caapi. It generally contains harmine, harmaline, and tetrahydroharmine. Dennis McKenna has described two non-published varietals, variety Kaupuri and Tukanaka. Kaupuri is generally considered to be stronger than Tukanaka and can be identified by the nodes that occur along the vine. Frequently, this is sold as yellow ayahuasca or caapi, but you really can't rely on those color identifications. This is the analysis of one specimen of Banisteriopsis caapi. As you see, harmine is the main alkaloid, followed by harmaline and tetrahydroharmine. This is just relative alkaloid abundance, so this was just the general ratios in the sample tested. This is a folk varietal located, generally grown in Brazil, of Banisteriopsis caapi called Ourinhos, which means little gold in Portuguese. The really interesting thing about this particular specimen is that we found significant amounts of keto-tetrahydronorharmine, which is an alkaloid that was described by Kawanashi and Hashimoto 10 or 20 years ago, but they only found trace amounts of this alkaloid in their vine, much lower than what we found to be about half of the harmine content in this vine. We don't know what the pharmacological implications of finding this are, but we're very interested in trying to find out if we can gather more information on this alkaloid.
Banisteriopsis muricata is another interesting species. It has been called sometimes red ayahuasca due to the color of the brew that is very deep red when you brew it. And our tests show that it has a very similar alkaloid profile to Banisteriopsis caapi. So it's basically harmine and tetrahydroharmine. There has been some speculation that the leaves of this plant also contain DMT, and that an orally active brew could be made from the leaves of this vine with the vine itself, but our analysis of the leaves did not find DMT or neither any other tryptamines. So this is our research from one analysis of a sample that shows mostly harmine and tetrahydroharmine a little bit.
Tetrapteris methistica is a vine that was first described by Richard Evan Schultes, who collected a sample but unfortunately lost it when his canoe overturned in the Amazon. And so we've run the first analysis of this species. Shulgin hypothesized, based on Schultes' bioassay, that there were harmala alkaloids in this vine, but we have not been able to identify any compounds in this vine with any compounds in the NIST database, which would include tryptamines and beta-carbolines. Interestingly enough, Jonathan Ott made a statement yesterday saying that this was perhaps a more desperate vine in some areas where it wasn't necessarily first choice. It's traditionally brewed via cold water decoction and without admixture, which in turn raises questions about whether or not it contains any MAOIs or the effect of heat on compounds in this, such as uramamine or perhaps other things of that nature.
Alicia anisopetala is another interesting case. It's a species that has been appearing in the global market, and it was first mislabeled as Diplopteris cabrerana, and then it started being sold as black caapi by different vendors, and so supposedly people were saying that it had harmine, but our analysis did not show any harmala-related compounds. Also, some vendors were claiming again that an orally active brew can be made mixing the leaves and the vine, but the leaves neither have any tryptamines. So if someone gets this vine, we would like to tell you to be cautious, because these compounds that are there, we don't know what they are, and we don't know the pharmacology, toxicity. So also, apart from the harmala containing vines in ayahuasca, there are several admixtures. We have been focusing so far on the DMT containing admixtures, but we know that there are other admixtures, and we might research this in the future. We have been finding, again, with the admixtures, that there is a lot of botanical confusion, and people have been mislabeling things or misidentifying. So we've been trying to research a little bit on that also.
Yeah, when it comes to Psychotria species, it's really unsurprising to see the amount of misidentification we're seeing, because it's one of the hardest genera to identify species from. We've analyzed and quantified numerous Psychotria viridis samples to date, and we've actually found alkaloid content ranging from 0.21% to 0.52%. For some information on how to identify some of the more commonly encountered species, I'd recommend checking out the talk I gave at last year's MAP Psychedelic Science, which gives a brief overview and breakdown of the identification. We've also analyzed a number of Psychotria alba specimens, and to date we have found no DMT whatsoever in any of them. This is significant because Psychotria alba is frequently sold as Psychotria viridis on the online marketplace, and it gets more complicated because Psychotria alba is no longer recognized as a botanical species. It's actually been lumped into Psychotria carthaginensis and is considered a synonym, as there are some older analytical claims that have shown the presence of DMT in Psychotria carthaginensis samples. My current hypothesis is that Psychotria carthaginensis as a species is incredibly variable with alkaloid content, and that you might find some that contain decent amounts of DMT and others that literally contain none.
So Diplopteris cabrerana or chaliponga is also one of the main admixtures that has been used. A lot of people have been claiming that it results in like very powerful experiences compared with Psychotria viridis leaves. And some people have been speculating that this is related to 5-methoxy-DMT content. But so far, only one analysis has shown only trace amounts of 5-methoxy-DMT, and we have also run our own tests on a sample that some people are saying that, oh, this plant gives weird or dark trips, but we also only found, what happened? Oh, it disappeared. Okay, anyways, it was a mass spectra, and we only found DMT and fatty acids on this sample, so we think that it's probably related to just a lot of DMT in the plant and maybe self-suggestion. So you mix these two, maybe that's why people have been having this different experiences.
So while ayahuasca is the most commonly discussed preparation involving beta-carbolines and DMT, there's a whole host of historical evidence documenting other preparations as well as a number of modern practices involving preparations made from a number of other plants containing both beta-carbolines and tryptamines. And one thing that becomes really interesting with some of the harmala alkaloid or related plants is that we're seeing more and more research into alternative locally grown beta-carboline source plants.
So Paganum harmala, it has a very rich ethnobotanical history in the Middle East. It's the most commonly used vine analog, we could say, but it's not really an analog. I mean, it has been used by itself. It has a lot of harmine and harmaline content and a little bit of tetrahydroharmine. And one interesting thing about this plant is that it has a class of alkaloids called quinazoline alkaloids, including vazicinone and vazicine. And these compounds, the peculiarity of them is that they have an abortifacient and uterotonic qualities. And what this means is that for pregnant women, they should not consume just a simple brew of Paganum harmala because this could induce abortion. So there is an easy way to separate these alkaloids from the harmalas, and through what we call a Manske extraction. And if you want to learn how to do that, you just go to the Nexus. Also another, some people have been researching the Passiflora genus to orally activate DMT or to for an experience, psychoactive experience, and also the Eleagnus shrubs. And but there have been actually mixed results about it. And we also tell people to be cautious because these plants, they may contain some alkaloids or compounds that could be toxic, like Passiflora. Some Passiflora have cardiac glycosides and other compounds which could be toxic. So please research well what you're taking.
In addition to the beta-carboline plants that occur all over the world, there's a number of DMT-containing plants, including things like Desmanthus, Mimosa, Acacia, Phalaris, and a whole host of others. It's worth noting that many of these plants contain numerous other compounds in addition to DMT, either other tryptamines and or beta-carbolines, as well as a whole host of other things, and that when working with or discussing these plants, it's valuable to talk about them with regards to the full alkaloid content rather than just viewing them as mere sources for DMT. And outside of indigenous contexts, it's quite probable that these plants have been responsible for the vast majority of DMT-facilitated experiences. Acacias in the past couple years have become incredibly popular sources of tryptamines, with species presenting DMT yields from 0.2% to over 1.5%. The Nexus has analyzed numerous acacias that have not appeared in the literature at all and have found DMT in them. Additionally, we confirmed the tentative tryptamine finding by White in Acacia acuminata to actually be DMT. Acacias contain numerous beta-carboline compounds, and we've actually found 2 specimens where we found harmine, but we think that there is the possibility that the sample was contaminated, and so we want to do further analysis to nail that down. Additionally, several acacias have been reported to be orally active when brewed on their own without any sort of additional plant, which raises a number of questions. And finally, monomethyltryptamine, or NMT, has been reported by a number of people to be psychoactive on its own. Nexian and acacia researcher Nen gave an outstanding talk at Breaking Convention entitled NMT, a spatial hallucinogen with therapeutic applications, and it's really outstanding. You can find it online, and I would highly recommend taking a look at that. We've analyzed several acacia. Right here we have the twigs and leaves of Acacia obtusifolia. As you can see, DMT is the main alkaloid, and they have very clean alkaloid profiles. One of the most significant things about this finding is that harvesting root bark or trunk bark from acacias, even if it seems like a very small amount, can kill the trees. And so this presents a sustainable alternative that also has reliably high and clean sources of DMT. The slide that wasn't playing for some reason shows Acacia acuminata, the broad phyllode phenotype. And the interesting thing about that is the main compound we found in that at about 0.5% total alkaloid content was, 0.5% yield was MTHBC, followed by DMT at 0.3% and then tryptamine at 0.16%. Given that this is orally active, it raises questions about MTHBC's potential role as an MAOI, or it could indicate the presence of compounds such as uramamine, which wouldn't survive GCMS due to the heat involved.
There has been recently a lot of talk regarding Phalaris genus, but for those people that think they can just harvest some grass from their lawn and make a brew and get high, I mean, you should reconsider, because this plant has a lot of compounds of some of unknown toxicity. There are gramine and analogs, and some unknown, unstudied tryptamines and beta-carbolines. There is a way to separate DMT from these compounds. Basically, if you extract using limonene or naphtha, it is more selective towards DMT. So if you want more information about that, please go to the Nexus. And lastly, Mimosa tenuiflora, we have been doing some research on that also. It contains mainly DMT. It's a plant that has a rich ethnobotanical history in Caatinga in Brazil in the northeast. And it has mainly DMT. It has also been found to contain uramamine, which could be the compound responsible for its oral activity of the cold water brew of Mimosa, because when you heat it up, uramamine degrades. We also found some compounds that have been described for the first time in Mimosa that no one had found before, which include some different beta-carbolines and even some phenethylamine-related compounds. And just to finish up, what's coming next, we are going to keep doing analysis on different plants, and we welcome everybody who's interested in it, or researchers who want to double-check our results, to please come online.
We're also hoping to look into a hypothesized reduction reaction that may take place when ayahuasca is boiled. There's some evidence from folks like McElhenney and Callaway that over the course of an extended boil, harmine interconverts to harmaline, which then may interconvert to tetrahydroharmine. And given the different potencies of these compounds, as well as their different efficacies, that inhibiting MAO, it raises questions about the pharmacological effects, and we'd also like to know how fast and at what temperatures this reaction may take place.
We're also working on these kits using thin layer chromatography that we're gonna start spreading to people so that they can research substances at home for harm reduction and botanical research. So if you check the Nexus, this should come out soon, hopefully. And we have a Share the Seeds project also, which is a very nice initiative from some Nexians. And it's basically an initiative to spread seeds and live plants of these plants of interest. And it's all done for free and exchange between people. So you can join Share the Seeds and get these plants or seeds if you want to grow your own.
And finally, in an attempt to deal with some of the misinformation that's been widely found in mainstream outlets covering psychedelic news or busts or things of that nature, we've started a project called The Nexian, which is an online e-zine and accompanying news site that covers a whole range of topics. We actually printed the first 50 hard copies ever. I think there's probably like 10 or so still at the ICEER's table. It's been a really incredible project, and we're looking forward to continuing that into the future. I'd like to invite anybody, or we'd like to invite anybody here who has anything they feel that they could contribute or learn from the Nexus to please, come join the forum, contribute what you can, share whatever. And thank you so much for being here.